They didn't just upgrade a 40-year-old missile, they taught it to hunt moving targets at sea after spending decades hitting stationary coordinates on land. And the transformation happened so quietly that most people missed the strategic earthquake it created. This is the Tomahawk Block 5, the missile that ruled land attack missions for 4 decades, now reborn as a ship killer that can switch targets mid-flight based on data transmitted from satellites, aircraft, or other vessels hundreds of miles away. Not a new weapon system, not a clean sheet design, the same missile, fundamentally reimagined. And here's what makes this evolution genuinely terrifying for adversaries. Every surface ship and submarine in the US Navy inventory that carries Tomahawks, and that's dozens of platforms, suddenly gained the ability to sink enemy warships from distances exceeding 1,000 miles. The threat matrix didn't just expand, it multiplied. Because when a weapon designed to destroy buildings can suddenly hunt destroyers, and when it can make that decision autonomously after launch, the rules of naval engagement don't bend, they shatter. Let me show you how America turned its most proven land attack weapon into a maritime assassin that rewrites what's possible in naval warfare. The foundation: 4 decades of precision. The BGM 109 Tomahawk has been the backbone of American naval strike capability since 1983. Over 2,300 Tomahawks were fired in combat between 1991 and 2017 from operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, and Yemen. The weapon earned its reputation through consistency. Launch it from a destroyer in the Persian Gulf, and 90 minutes later, a bunker in Baghdad ceases to exist. The missile travels at subsonic speeds, approximately 550 miles per hour, using terrain contour matching and GPS guidance to navigate to fixed coordinates with accuracy measured in meters. It's not fast, it's not stealthy in the radar evading sense, but it works. Mission after mission, year after year, the Tomahawk delivers warheads to precise locations regardless of weather, time of day, or defensive measures. Current operational variants include the Tomahawk Block 4, capable of ranges exceeding 1,000 nautical miles. That's over 1,150 statute miles. The missile can loiter over target areas, receive in-flight targeting updates, and even transmit battle damage imagery back to commanders before striking. These are land attack capabilities that have been refined through decades of real-world use, but land attack missions have a fundamental limitation. The target stays still. A building doesn't maneuver. A radar installation doesn't change course at 30 knots. The missile knows where it's going from the moment it launches, and the target cooperatively remains there until impact. Ships don't cooperate like that. The anti-ship problem. Engaging a moving ship at sea requires capabilities completely different from hitting stationary targets on land. The target moves continuously at speeds up to 30 or 40 knots. It maneuvers evasively when it detects threats. It deploys electronic warfare to jam or spoof incoming missiles. And most importantly, the missile cannot rely on pre-programmed coordinates, because by the time the weapon arrives, the ship has moved miles from where it was when the missile launched. For decades, the U.S. Navy relied on dedicated anti-ship missiles to solve this problem. The Harpoon missile, introduced in 1977, became the standard anti-ship weapon across surface ships, submarines, and aircraft. It uses active radar homing to find and track ships, flying a sea-skimming profile to avoid detection and maximize lethality. But Harpoon has limitations. Its range maxes out around 80 nautical miles, depending on variant and launch platform. In an era where Chinese and Russian anti-ship missiles reach 200, 300, even 400 plus miles, that range disadvantage becomes a death sentence. American ships must close to within 80 miles to launch Harpoons, exposing themselves to enemy weapons that can engage from 3 times that distance. The Navy needed longer range, they needed magazine depth, more missiles per ship, and they needed a solution that didn't require developing an entirely new weapon system from scratch, which takes decades and costs billions. The answer was already loaded in vertical launch cells on dozens of ships and submarines. It just needed to learn how to hunt. Block V, the transformation. In 2015, Raytheon began developing the Tomahawk Block V, officially designated as the Maritime Strike Tomahawk. The program didn't start from zero. It took the proven Block 4 airframe, propulsion, and navigation systems, then added new seeker technology and software that fundamentally changed what the missile could do. The key addition is a multi-mode seeker combining active radar homing with passive radio frequency detection. Active radar means the missile emits its own radar signals and tracks the reflections bouncing back from targets. This allows autonomous target acquisition and tracking without any input from the launching platform. Passive RF detection means the missile can also home in on electromagnetic emissions from enemy ships, their radars, communications, electronic warfare systems. The result is a missile that can find ships on its own, discriminate between targets, and adjust its flight path to intercept moving vessels, all while receiving updates through two-way data links that allow retargeting in flight. On May 16, 2022, the Navy conducted a test that validated the entire concept. USS Zumwalt, a guided missile destroyer, launched a Tomahawk Block V against a moving maritime target in the Pacific. The missile flew a complex route, received mid-course targeting updates, acquired the target autonomously with its seeker, and scored a direct hit. That test wasn't just proof of concept. It was the starting gun on naval warfare's evolution. What makes Block V unique? The Maritime Strike Tomahawk doesn't just add anti-ship capability. It maintains full land attack functionality while adding ship hunting capability in the same airframe. This dual-mode operation means a single missile loaded into a vertical launch cell can be tasked against either ships or land targets, and that decision can be made after launch. Consider the tactical implications. A destroyer operating in the South China Sea launches 4 Tomahawks toward a general target area 800 miles away. Initially, they're programmed for land attack missions against Chinese radar installations on artificial islands, but mid-flight, intelligence reports a Chinese destroyer transiting nearby. The strike controller retargets 2 of the 4 Tomahawks from land to maritime strike mode. Those 2 missiles adjust course, activate their maritime seekers, locate the destroyer, and engage it while the other 2 continue to their original land targets. 4 missiles, 2 different missions, 1 launch sequence. The two-way data link is critical to this flexibility. Legacy Tomahawks could receive updates but couldn't send information back. Block V can transmit what its sensors observe, providing real-time intelligence to commanders. If the missile detects unexpected air defenses, ship movements, or high-value targets, it reports that information. Commanders can then decide to retarget the missile, redirect it to secondary objectives, or abort the mission entirely. This capability transforms Tomahawks from fire-and-forget weapons into persistent sensors that happen to carry 1,000-pound warheads. The range advantage range is where Tomahawk Block V becomes strategically devastating. While exact classified specifications vary by variant and flight profile, Block V maintains Tomahawk's established range exceeding 1,000 nautical miles. Some analysts estimate actual combat radius could extend beyond 1,500 miles under optimal conditions. Compare that to dedicated anti-ship missiles. Harpoon, ANZU's 80 nautical miles, naval strike missile, 1 to 15 nautical miles long range, anti-ship missile, LRASM, 200 plus nautical miles. The Tomahawk outranges them all by margins measured in hundreds of miles. This creates asymmetric advantages that adversaries cannot easily counter. A U.S. Navy destroyer positioned 1,000 miles from Chinese-controlled waters in the South China Sea can launch Tomahawks that strike enemy ships operating near disputed islands. The destroyer never enters range of Chinese land-based anti-ship missiles, Chinese aircraft, or Chinese surface combatants. It fights from sanctuary, forcing adversaries to either extend their defensive perimeters impossibly far or accept that American missiles can reach targets they cannot defend. submarines gain even more advantage. Virginia-class and Ohio-class submarines carry Tomahawks in vertical launch tubes. An Ohio-class guided missile submarine, SSGN, converted from ballistic missile service, can carry up to 154 Tomahawks. With Block V's maritime strike capability, that submarine becomes a silent ship killer carrying enough missiles to threaten an entire enemy fleet. And because submarines operate covertly, adversaries don't know where the threats are coming from. Chinese intelligence might track U.S. surface ships, but they cannot track submerged submarines launching Tomahawks from positions 1,000 plus miles away in multiple directions. The threat axis becomes omnidirectional and unpredictable. The economics of naval firepower cost becomes a strategic weapon when you understand magazine depth. Each Tomahawk Block 5 costs approximately $1.5 to $2 million depending on production quantities and contract specifics. That sounds expensive until you compare it to alternatives. The Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile, LRASM, currently the Navy's newest dedicated anti-ship weapon, costs approximately $3 to $4 million per unit. It offers advanced targeting and stealth features, but at twice the cost with half the range of Tomahawk Block V. For the same budget, the Navy can procure twice as many Tomahawks as LRASMs, doubling magazine capacity across the fleet without building additional ships or modifying existing launch systems. Here's where the economics get truly interesting. The Navy operates approximately 90 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and Ticonderoga-class cruisers, each equipped with 90 to 122 vertical launch cells. Not every cell carries Tomahawks. Many hold air defense missiles like SM-2, SM-6, and ESSM, but a typical surface combatant might allocate 30 to 50 cells for strike weapons. If 50 ships carry 40 Tomahawks each, that's 2,000 missiles ready to launch. Add the 4 Ohio-class SSGNs with 154 Tomahawks each, plus Virginia-class submarines carrying 12 each, and the total inventory climbs rapidly. Thousands of missiles, all now capable of both land attack and anti-ship missions. Adversaries must defend against every single one. They cannot assume a Tomahawk is only targeting land. They cannot predict which missiles carry anti-ship seekers. Every launch becomes a threat to every ship within 1,000 miles. That uncertainty forces adversaries to allocate defensive resources against thousands of potential threats, straining air defense systems, overwhelming command and control, and creating gaps that other American weapons exploit. The Network Effect Block 5 doesn't operate alone. It integrates into the Navy's Naval Integrated Fire Control Counter-Air (NIFC-CA) architecture, a network that connects sensors and shooters across multiple platforms. An E-2D Hawkeye airborne early warning aircraft detects enemy ships 300 miles away using its advanced radar. That data transmits through the network to a destroyer 200 miles behind the Hawkeye. The destroyer launches Tomahawk Block versus programmed with initial target coordinates provided by the Hawkeye. As the missiles transit toward the target area, they receive continuous updates. If the enemy ships change course, the network recalculates intercept vectors and transmits new waypoints. When the missiles enter terminal phase, their onboard seekers activate, acquiring targets autonomously, while the network provides situational updates on which targets to prioritize. The missiles can even coordinate among themselves. If multiple Tomahawks engage the same target area, they communicate to divide targets, ensuring efficient distribution of warheads rather than wasting multiple missiles on the same ship. This network-centric approach multiplies effectiveness. A single platform's sensors become every platform's sensors. A submarine that cannot see over the horizon borrows eyes from satellites, aircraft, and surface ships, then launches weapons that autonomously prosecute targets the submarine itself never detected. The modernization program. The Navy's recertification and modernization program ensures Tomahawk remains viable for decades. In March 2024, Raytheon received contracts exceeding $1.2 billion to recertify and upgrade existing Tomahawk missiles to Block V standards. This matters because the Navy doesn't need to build thousands of new missiles. They're converting existing inventory missiles that have been in storage for years, updating them with new seekers, electronics, and software that transform 1990s era land attack weapons into 2020s era multi mission platforms. The program aims to recertify approximately 4,000 Tomahawks through 2028, with production of new Block V missiles continuing in parallel. By 2030, the majority of the Navy's Tomahawk inventory will have maritime strike capability, fundamentally changing the fleet's offensive power without building a single new ship. Integration continues expanding. In 2024, the Navy confirmed Tomahawk Block 5 had been certified for launch from multiple platforms, including Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, Ticonderoga-class cruisers, Virginia-class submarines, and Ohio-class SSGNs. Future integration with the Columbia-class ballistic missile submarines and Constellation-class frigates is planned, ensuring new platforms gain the capability as they enter service. Combat validation. While the May 2022 test from USS Zumwalt validated maritime strike capability in controlled conditions, the real question is combat performance. The Navy hasn't publicly disclosed combat employment of Block V in anti-ship mode yet, but the testing program has been extensive. Beyond the 2022 test, the Navy conducted multiple exercises in 2023 and 2024 involving live-fire Tomahawk launches against representative targets. These exercises validated performance in contested electromagnetic environments with active jamming, tested seeker discrimination against multiple ships in formation, and confirmed kill chain integration with various sensor platforms. Importantly, tests included scenarios where missiles engaged targets beyond the launching ship's radar horizon, relying entirely on external targeting data and onboard seekers. Success rates remain classified, but the Navy's decision to accelerate recertification and expand production suggests confidence in operational effectiveness. Strategic shift. The Tomahawk Block V represents more than a capability upgrade. It signals a fundamental shift in how the Navy approaches distributed maritime operations. For decades, anti-ship warfare required ships to close within 80 miles to launch harpoons or wait for aircraft to deliver anti-ship missiles. That doctrine worked when adversaries lacked long-range weapons, but Chinese DF-21D and DF-26 anti-ship ballistic missiles and Russian Kaliber and Zircon cruise missiles forced a rethink. The Navy cannot afford to send $2 billion destroyers into range of weapons that can sink them from 500 plus miles away, but with Tomahawk Block V, they don't need to. Destroyers and submarines launch from sanctuary ranges exceeding 1,000 miles, engaging enemy ships without exposing themselves to counterfire. This enables distributed lethality, the concept of spreading offensive capability across many platforms rather than concentrating it in a few high-value units. Every Tomahawk-capable ship becomes a long-range anti-ship threat. Adversaries cannot focus defenses on a few carriers or cruisers because threats emerge from destroyers, submarines, and eventually frigates positioned throughout the battle space. China's People's Liberation Army Navy has been expanding rapidly, now operating more hulls than the U.S. Navy. But numbers matter less when each American ship carries weapons that outrange Chinese equivalents by factors of 3 to 5. Quality of weapons can offset quantity of platforms, and Block V provides that qualitative edge. What adversaries face from China's perspective, the Tomahawk Block V creates nightmares. Every U.S. surface ship and submarine in the Pacific becomes a potential anti-ship platform with 1,000-plus mile reach. Chinese Type 055 destroyers and Type 052D destroyers carry anti-ship missiles maxing out around 300-400 miles. They must close to within a third of Tomahawk's range to engage American ships, exposing themselves to defensive weapons like SM-6 while never getting close enough to launch their own weapons effectively. Chinese intelligence must track not just American carriers and cruisers, but every destroyer and submarine, because any platform could be carrying dozens of Tomahawks, and submarines, by definition, cannot be reliably tracked when submerged. The defensive problem multiplies when you consider salvo sizes. If one American destroyer launches 30 Tomahawks, can Chinese destroyers intercept all 30? Their primary air defense missiles, the HHQ 9, have limited magazine depth. Firing 30 interceptors depletes defensive capacity, leaving ships vulnerable to follow on strikes. And if multiple American ships launch coordinated salvos, say 100 Tomahawks from several platforms, converging on a Chinese surface action group from different vectors, the defensive math becomes impossible. No ship carries enough interceptors to defeat that volume of incoming weapons, especially when Tomahawks can be retargeted mid-flight to avoid predicted intercept points. Russia faces similar challenges. Their surface fleet is smaller and more concentrated. A Tomahawk salvo against a Russian naval task force could devastate multiple high-value units simultaneously from ranges Russian weapons cannot reach. The limitations Block 5 isn't invincible. Its subsonic speed makes it vulnerable to modern air defenses if detected early. Advanced radar systems can track subsonic cruise missiles, and fighters equipped with long-range air-to-air missiles can intercept them before they reach targets. The missile's radar cross-section is reduced but not truly stealthy, like LRASM. Sophisticated adversaries with layered air defenses, advanced fighters, and competent command and control can intercept Tomahawks, especially if they detect the launch and predict the missile's route. Weather and sea state can affect seeker performance. Heavy rain, rough seas, and high waves create radar clutter that complicates target discrimination. While the multi-mode seeker helps mitigate these issues, it doesn't eliminate them entirely, and cost, while favorable compared to alternatives, still matters. At $1.5 to $2 million per missile, a 30-missile salvo represents $45 to $60 million in munitions. Large-scale conflicts could exhaust inventories quickly, and production capacity limits how fast the Navy can replenish stocks. But these limitations don't negate the weapon's value. They simply define its employment envelope. Tomahawk Block V excels in scenarios where its range advantage allows engagement from beyond enemy defensive umbrellas, where its numbers overwhelm limited defensive capacity, and where its dual-mode capability provides operational flexibility that adversaries cannot match. The future. The Navy isn't finished evolving Tomahawk. Research continues into further capability enhancements, including improved seekers with better discrimination in cluttered environments, extended range variants potentially exceeding 2,000 miles, and integration with next-generation networks enabling even more sophisticated coordinated attacks. There's also discussion of Tomahawk potentially carrying alternative payloads beyond high-explosive warheads. Electronic warfare packages that jam enemy sensors, communications relay nodes that extend network coverage, and even loitering munitions that dispense smaller submunitions could all fit within Tomahawk's existing form factor. As artificial intelligence and machine learning advance, future Tomahawks might employ autonomous swarm tactics where dozens of missiles collaborate to overwhelm defenses, prioritize targets dynamically, and adapt attack profiles based on real-time battle damage assessment, all without human intervention beyond initial launch authorization. The message. When the Navy quietly upgraded a 40-year-old land attack missile into a long-range ship killer, they weren't just adding a capability, they were sending a message. The message is this: American naval power doesn't depend on matching adversaries ship for ship. It depends on making every platform more lethal, more flexible, and more survivable than anything adversaries can field. China can build more destroyers. Russia can deploy more submarines. But if American weapons outrange theirs by 500 to 1,000 miles, if American missiles can switch missions mid-flight, and if American platforms can engage from positions adversaries cannot defend, the numbers become secondary to capability. The Tomahawk Block 5 proves that innovation doesn't always require starting from scratch. Sometimes the most devastating advances come from taking proven systems and reimagining what they can do. A missile that spent 40 years hitting stationary targets now hunts moving ships across distances adversaries cannot match. The weapon didn't change. The possibilities did. And for anyone planning to challenge American sea control, that evolution is the most dangerous development in naval warfare since the carrier replaced the battleship as the dominant capital ship. Because when land attack weapons become ship killers without losing their original mission, and when thousands of them are already deployed across dozens of platforms, the question isn't whether adversaries can build defenses, it's whether they can build them fast enough, and the answer increasingly is no.